Additional applause for absolutely brilliant, because the idea is, if you have people who are possibly committing violations, not because they want to commit violations, but because there is pollution affecting their production, and you know, maybe if you help them to avoid the pollution, then you don't need to run after every little shell to see if it's contaminated. It's like, you know, taking regulatory delivery by the outcome, saying we want this outcome, how do we reach this outcome?
With this model, we can have a prediction of 6 days.
Yeah, I remember I see the detailed description of the model. It was super brilliant. Thank you very much. Kevin, you want to come? Because I saw you had your luggage ready, so I suspect you might need to rush to the airport at some point.
Yep, I'm good to go. Thank you.
Go.
My title was Implementing a Supply Chain Approach to Construction Safety. So that's what I was asked to talk about. My mind has been blown away to hear some of the regulatory challenges about the future of cybernetics and climate change, and that I feel slightly antediluvian talking about construction safety. I used a quotation from the second book of the Bible, where there was basically the first regulation that I've ever found about construction safety. So, what have we learned in 2,000 years? Everybody will understand that construction is a dangerous industry because of its inherent hazards, but it's also made more dangerous because the risk that's created by the way structurally it's procured and managed and delivered. It's a very fragmented industry. You've got clients, you've got designers, architects, you've got principal contractors, you've got subcontractors, you've got specialist subcontractors, and that's a real challenge. That's partly what creates the risk. But actually, if you can get your head around it, you can turn that challenge into an opportunity as a regulator by actually working through the supply chain. So if you can get, the problem with construction is that the occupational health and safety risks on any given site have already been built into the project before the first piece of turf is done, because of decisions that's been made in procurement, in design, and all the rest of it. So you're often trying to deal with the consequences of things that happened some time ago. And legislation now, certainly in the EU, recognises the role of clients and that. So if you can work with clients, if you can work with designers, if you can work with principal contractors to properly manage their supply chain, that is a more effective way of influencing behaviours, and it's also the more efficient way, because if you can get if McDonald's, if they're rolling out a load of new restaurants, God forbid, in the UK, there's a series of projects. If you can engage with them at the beginning so that they've got their procurement right, you have less problems on site. And that's the way in which we try to modernise and develop our regulatory approach in health and safety in the construction industry, and I produced some evidence to demonstrate that it worked. We had another presentation in our group from someone who I don't think is here now, Gediminas Dalmantas. He's the chairman of airports, runs airports here in Lithuania, and he also runs railways in Lithuania. And he's the chairman of the board, and he looked about 35. He was quite impressive. But he was asking a question in his session about challenges going forward in constructing railways that are going to be there in 30 years' time because of the impact of climate change. Traditional materials that you use are are not going to be capable of coping with the extremes of climate that we're likely to have. And he was asking the question as to when's the regulator going to get his finger out and tell him what he needs to do in order to do it. I'm exaggerating it to make the point. And so in this, we had a discussion about, well, you're managing the business, you know what the risks are, why are you waiting for the regulator to tell you what to do, because you're making investments and decisions now. So we had a very interesting discussion. He actually agreed with the premise of that. Part of his case was honourable, committed people with the right values will do that, others won't. And also the other risk is they make the decisions and then 10 years later the regulator comes out with some regulations which actually are coming from a different place and creates a problem. But the solution to that obviously is for the regulators and the industries to work together now to deal and agree with these things going forward. And that was basically the main theme with respect to any of the other discussions from that particular workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't think any Midas is here and to leave, so it's nice that you were carrying his question. Yeah, any questions to Kevin while we have him here, or comments, or just everybody's happy? So, thank you. So I'm continuing my policy of trying to turn around the planet and different topics as well. Can I ask do we have the colleagues from Estonia, from the Estonian Health Board?
No, they just left.
They left.
And these two are running meetings.
Yeah, you in?
Yeah, I would like to leave already.
Okay, so we wish you a safe trip.
Thank you.
If you have asked who was leaving soon, that's a mistake on my side. I understand point. Emilio, you go.
Oh.
You are somebody from Estonia.
Thank you, Barry. So my presentation was about hydrogen and shipping and licensing new fuels. So the main points of my presentation is that shipping amounts for 80 to 90% of the goods moving from one country to another. It's vastly easier to move things on water than on land, not even mentioning by plane. With the current technologies, ships have grown extremely huge. It's difficult to fathom how huge they are. We are used to things that are basically human-sized, so we might be accustomed to our bicycles and maybe cars, and a large vehicle for us is a lorry, a truck. Typical container carrier is the equivalent of a 300-kilometer long train. And ships like that land in major harbors every week. And that's for one, that would be typical for one carrier, like Maersk or MSC or Evergreen, sort of things. So you can have one or several ships like that arriving in the harbor every day. These ships, of course, use tremendous amounts of energy, and that amounts to 2 to 3% of the greenhouse gases that are emitted by energy consumption. So it's a significant amount of greenhouse gases that needs to be tackled if we are to meet our objectives for sustainable energies by 2050. Since ships are so huge, they also live a long life. So a typical life cycle of a ship is 40 years. We are now in 2025. That entails that if we want to decarbonize shipping by 2050, the ships running in 2050 need to be built now. So we need to switch to sustainable fuels now. Hydrogen itself is not really suitable for long sea transoceanic journey on a scale, but some energy hydrogen carriers are, so typically methanol or ammonia. Some ships are being built now with dual engines that can use methanol or ammonia, but the difficulty is to license such fuels and all the facilities that go around them. Also, fueling a ship entails producing the fuel, transporting it, storing it into the harbor, fueling the ship, and also procedures like ship-to-ship refueling or fuel transfer. All of these steps need to be licensed, and some of them are difficult to license because hydrogen is still viewed as a novel fuel, and because in certain cases, the existing regulations are meant for other uses. So, for instance, ammonia is being used on an industrial level at the moment, but mostly for fertilizers. So we need to switch to a new way of seeing ammonia, producing it, that is also suitable for ships. Another difficulty or point of attention, let's say, is that if you need to send a ship overseas, it needs to refuel there. A typical container ship eats up like 500 tons of bunker fuel per day. So you don't have a lot of autonomy. It can't sail for a week, then it has to go to harbor, refuel, and go on. If your ship can find its fuel only in your ports, it can't go anywhere. So we need to have somewhat coordinated licensing efforts from all countries, and that also on the reverse entails that the late adopters will be at a significant disadvantage when the fuel is being produced on a large scale. So that's an incentive for switching. Actually, the questions of the workshop turned out to be questions about the session of the previous day on critical infrastructure. So we talked about the Russian Ghost Fleet, which is a set of old decrepit ships being used by the Russian regime for essentially illegal fossil fuel traffic, and also for intelligence and sabotage. And we talked about the need for a political response, politically backed response to this reality. This requires naval assets, which are not necessarily available in the neighboring countries. So we will need to have a response at the level of the European Union and of NATO. This requires political will and political information.
That was very cool. I'll never forget the 300-kilometer long train because my brain went into meltdown. Any question or comment or anything to Emmanuel? You know, likes things which burn and explode.
Yes, that's why I'm completely enthusiastic. Especially because, perhaps at the same point, the same question I've posed a few times. But we, for decades we were very much afraid of ammonia. And we had European and national programs to phase out as much as possible ammonia. We still have this policy, this risk policy, formally in the Netherlands, with one ministry. And while we now have another ministry who says, and you will explain it candidly, we should have much more ammonia. we don't seem to be able to slay down another old-fashioned risk assessment. How to do that?
Yes, so to be clear, ammonia is very dangerous, it's toxic, and as its use as a fuel implies, it's very energetic, so it always means that it can burn and explode in your face. The fears are legitimate, and then again, and that's a point I had in my slide, but I don't have them here, so I forgot to mention it, so thank you for reminding me. There is the risk of using ammonia, and there is a risk of not using ammonia, which entails continuing using dirty greenhouse effect entailing fossil fuel, which is not a risk, but a guarantee that we are roasting ourselves. So we need to evolve in that and to accommodate the risk that ammonia entails to fight the risk of climate change, mitigate it.
Yeah.
I just want to say that it's like the word resilience, and now I have a second nice word you came up with, accommodate. It's all about acceptance, isn't it?
I would say so, but but
Sorry, that's fine.
I would naively say so, but there are much better experts than I in the room, so I would defer to my betters.
No, I think it's interesting. So one thing, I'll first take this one, and then I'll add a small thing on this whole story. When I was when we started the project on hydrogen regulation at the USCD, and we had a conversation with a colleague from ATHSE who introduced me to Kevin some years ago, who couldn't be this week, Jan Travers. And Jan told me, well, hydrogen, yes, it explodes. Guess what? It's a fuel. I mean, fuels explode. That's what literally they do. We know that we have a product, we understand the product, and we manage the risk. It reminds me of the answer yesterday about quality, etc. Well, the risks of compliance in your supply chain when you're a company dealing with producing something, pharmaceuticals, well, there's a known risk, right? So you are putting in place procedures, processes, and techniques and knowledge to manage this risk. Hydrocarbons explode all the time, right? So a lot of countries do use ammonia, but of course if you store it badly, handle it badly, etc., it does explode very well, right? And we know that. So I think the answer is, yeah, if it's the right fuel, then you should use it, but first you should use it with the right safety procedures and everything. What was very interesting is, so Emmanuel and myself are here today because, well, we were organizing this conference and the date was set and we're not going to not be here. Unfortunately, at the same time, we got invited to a conference in Singapore, so I nearly swapped with all my colleagues from Singapore here, a conference on low-carbon solutions to shipping. And we were like, of course we want to go, and our paper was accepted. But it was all happening at the same time. So a third colleague, Hansini Shankar, went for us and presented yesterday, I guess it was. And she was writing us today saying, look, I was the only one talking about regulatory problems. Nobody even realized they existed, and everybody was looking at me like, oh my God. Because indeed, what we have found, working on hydrogen supply chains, and used first in road transport for the Dutch ministry, and then interested in maritime transport, is nothing is ready. States and structure and meta-states, let's say, like the European Union, are ready to invest billions of euros, dollars, whatever, largely not being spent. I mean, largely the subsidies exist and are not being used as much as they could. And then you look at the problem, it's like the authorizations to just produce it are very complicated, transport it as well. But then the authorizations to use it are not there. So if I want to build a fleet of, okay, let's say I simplify my life and I just want to do local shipping, right? I'm not going around the world, I'm doing shipping as you could have around Singapore or as you could have in Greece between all the islands or etc. With hydrogen. Right now, you can't bring it to the harbor, you can fuel it in the harbor, you can bring your ship into harbor, you can bring your ship in the waterway, you can do anything. You can bring very dirty fuels which also explode, that's fine, we know them. They are in our regulations. We don't realize it, but our regulations are very slow to evolve and adapt to other policy priorities, and often the state ends up with one hand giving out money to do something, and the other hand saying, no, you can't do it. Right? Well, okay, hands don't work, don't talk, right? So probably my metaphor is a bit broken, but you see, like, maybe. Thanks a lot, again. Let's see if I manage to, well, Simon. Yeah. Trying to jump from one session to the other to keep this moving. And if I forget somebody at the end, you know, that person should tell me, you haven't called me.
It does feel a bit like creeping death and you're sitting there waiting for your turn. So my name is Simon Bingham, and using conference parlance, I am an environmental delivery implementation expert. I'm an environmental regulator. I gave 3 presentations, one yesterday and two today, hence the notes, because my memory isn't that good. One is very much at a intra-institutional level, another one is at a risk methodology level, and the last is an intra-inspection risk assessment. So 3 different levels. So the first one was on optimizing environmental risk assessment. And this is, as I said, the intra-agency and internal agency processes. So this presentation was brought about by the fact that I've carried out almost 25 different reviews of different environmental regulators. So brought up a series of different issues and problems which I can talk about. So the first was a need for effective communication in the regulatory cycle. So one of the big issues that we see is gaps in communication and collaboration between permitters, inspectors and environmental agencies that are providing data. So there's a need for effective collaboration and communication, both at just sharing information level, but also moving forward that to a combined data systems. We often talk about this at the enforcement chain level, so the inspectors, prosecutors, judges needing good communication, but I think we need to look internally as well at our own work. The importance of carrying out risk assessment at an organisational level rather than a departmental level. There's a real potential for us just to ensure that each of our own silos within a regulatory organisation is fully tasked up, rather than ensuring that as an entity we are focusing on the biggest risk. So I think focusing across the agency and deploying resource accordingly based on that need. Importance of it, identifying the obvious high-risk sites quickly. Certainly at an environmental level, we know who the big polluters are. We know who the sites are most likely to go boom, explode. We know the sectors that will give us the highest level of non-compliance. Therefore, developing risk assessment processes that make it torturous to get to identification of those systems is contrary to our needs, and we should be able to do it quickly. So have a simple, easy system that allows us to identify the blindingly obvious. The need to ensure environmental context is also included in the risk assessment process. This, you're probably quite surprised at this, but a lot of the time our risk assessment process is based on things like emissions or size, but not receiving water course, or receiving atmosphere, or sensitivity of habitat, or anything like that. That should be included in the process. Ensuring risk criteria are applied as risk changes, so don't set a static set of hazards. Change your risk criteria based on a changing environment, changing risk matrix. but also allows space to ensure strategic priorities are also included in the risk process. A brilliant example I had was I was working with a member state whose priority was improving the water quality of the biggest river in the country. Yet the risk criteria ensured that basically no discharges to water were ever inspected. So they were never going to meet that strategic target. So that was the first presentation. The second one was all about an off-the-shelf risk assessment methodology. It's called the IRIDE, Integrated Risk Assessment Methodology. It was made by an organisation called IMPEL, the EU Network for the Implementation and Enforcement of Environmental Law, made up of 58 different organisations from 37 countries, all environmental regulators that come together to work on the development of projects. As I said, this package is on the shelf, so any environmental regulator can just pick it up and apply it. It's a rules-based model. It's slightly different from most risk assessment models, so it can be a wee bit complicated, but it's there and off the shelf. It could be applied to other regimes, so although it was designed for environmental criteria, you could pick it up and use it for other businesses, construction, whatever. And the last presentation was applying a risk-based approach during environmental inspections. So, in the world of environmental inspections, very few requirements for us to actually go on site. There's only two directives, the Industrial Emissions Directive and the Supervisory 3 Directive, that actually say that we have to go and do site inspections. And when we do site inspection, there is no requirement, legal or otherwise, on us to inspect every condition in a permit. That's our choice. Yet, what I see is many inspectors will actually go through every single permit condition and take many hours, many days, and in one case I saw one agency that did up to 100 days on a single site inspection. So it's far better to actually concentrate on the priorities, the risks within a site inspection, and get through more inspections. Find the problems that are quite significant and do something about them, whether that's enforcement or stop pollution or whatever it is. So we can look at how to do this, and we can either do it through a checklist basis, so prioritise before you go out on site. You can do it on focusing on elements of process or elements of management or whatever you like. You can choose how you would approach it. But you can also take an organisational standpoint, where, for instance, you're going to do something horizontal. So focus on climate change and the climate change impact of those sites that are having those sites and those issues that are having the biggest impact. You could focus on, funding, storage, whatever you like. That's your ability. So I would say for most environmental inspections, they're somewhere in the order of 1 to 2 hours to 2 days. There's not many that would go beyond that, and that would be for a very big site. So that's me.
Thank you. I agree with you about Ireland. I think it's a very interesting risk assessment methodology. And it's a very interesting question that you're raising about how it's actually applied outside of the environment. What I particularly like about it is the emphasis on the risk coming from business. And that's something which tends to be overlooked in a lot of other sectors. They really focus on sectoral risk rather than focusing on the risk coming from business itself. And there's a lot of potential for doing more on business risk, because generally speaking, the factors in business risk should apply across all the different regulatory sectors. That is, if you're a multinational for food safety, you're not going to be a corner shop for environment. Some things just won't change. Capacities of businesses to tackle any particular regulatory regime are probably going to be consistent. So it is interesting to see whether Ireland could be adapted for wider use in our inspection model.
Yeah, I think IRIDE is great for that. I think it provides a single example model. People don't need to break their hands about, what is it. Was done, we said, 11 years ago originally, so there are things we can modernize, improve, we can do better with new tools now. But the fundamental logic is, yes, you can do risk assessment, you don't need rocket science, you don't need to have solved all your problems in life. The other thing I really liked in what you said is the idea that when you do an inspection, you don't necessarily need to inspect each and everything that exists potentially on the books. I will repeat in my closing notes. Thank you very much. May I ask?
So I'm the spokesman representing
Nice to meet you.
Veterinary Service, in other words, VMVT. So our work session was to share some practice on our developing risk assessment module. So to get a better view, so I can see that we are competent authority for the official control in the field of food, feed, drinking water, food contact materials, animal health and welfare, animal byproducts, so it's very broad spectrum, 14 or 10 sectors. So before developing starting developing the new system, we used to have old system for risk assessment of business entities. So imagine that we control over 96,000 operators, and yearly we perform about 16,000 inspections in different areas. So each of activity should be ranked according to the risk, because our official control must be risk-based. So imagine that each sector has different procedures for risk ranking. So if we have food, so we have one system. If we have feed, we have the other system. So we have around, 14 maybe sectors. Each sector has different procedures. Each procedure has different risk groups. So let's say in food sector we have 4 risk groups. Also, we have different frequency of control, because our official control frequency depends on the risk group. So let's say if one sector has 4 groups, so it means different 4 types of inspections will be done. The other sector has 3 groups. So what we did, we decided to transform and we decided to make a new model. Besides that, I would like to mention the whole system of risk ranking of food business, not food business, of all business operators. So we used to have a procedure that each inspector who is controlling business operators used to perform the risk assessment. So what it leads to? It leads to subjective assessment. It can lead maybe for business operator to get lower risk. So it means if I'm a lower risk, I would be inspected less, so more rarely. And so also maybe because one inspector used to inspect, let's say, the same business operator for several years. So sometimes it can mean that business operator is able not to be on the plan. So maybe we can have cases, let's say, from 2018, and still we have this operator not inspected. And also sometimes it can lead to corruption. So what we did, last year we had very big reorganization, so dividing control functions from the licensing, but the other organization was that all risk assessment and planning was centralized. So new division was established for assessing risk and for the planning of official control. That's why we revised all the procedures and we decided that in long-term goal we will have one unique system, risk model. So, of course, the expectations are very high, the time of period is very short, but we are doing our best. What is very important is, besides that risk assessment is centralized, we want to automate it. So it means that we are developing our new official control information system. And in this case, so there will be one model for risk assessment. There will be only, let's say, 4 risk categories. The frequency of control would be the same for the whole sector. So we are working on this. The main idea of the risk assessment was that this model has 2 parts. It's divided into 2 parts. One part is from static criteria, so it means, let's say, activity of the business. If we have slaughterhouses, so it will have higher score because of the activity. Also, we have criteria for capacity, so it means we will take into consideration how much, let's say, of food the business operator is producing, how many employees does it have, or what type, let's say, how many animals do they keep. Also, the market control, the export or import, because it is the quantity of the damage can be done, let's say, the operator exports the products. But what is very important, the other part, 64%, depends on the results of official control. So what does it mean? If, let's say, according to the static criteria as a business operator, I am okay, medium, high risk, maybe according to inspection results, I can be lower risk. Not the lowest, but the lower risk. So it means if I am compliant with the checklist, with the regulation, I may have a better score, I mean, to be in the lower risk. So this is the whole new idea. And also, besides this, so in our OKI system, in our official control information system, we want to build automated and centralized planning model. So risk assessment is the foundation for the automatic planning model. And also we want to make tracking, so the tracking will be better, unique system will be, there will be, we want to make travel maps also, because we work in the whole Lithuania, but usually the quantity of inspectors is not the same according to the region and the establishments. Let's say in Vilnius, we have a lot of food production establishments, but according to the number of inspectors, we are not eager to perform official control there. So we will invite the colleagues from the other regions. So, shortly speaking, we are on the transformation steps. I hope, I don't know, we listened yesterday to Giorgio, so I hope that the next step will be also maybe artificial intelligence implemented in the system. So, what are the results? So the results, first of all, so it will be centralized, it will be more objective, it will be a unique system, and also we will save our human resources to perform direct inspections, not to sit and make it in the papers. So, I don't know, maybe you have questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Inga. Any questions or reactions or whatever? Comments? Yes, Thomas.
Sorry, I keep asking questions. because I'm so interested in what everybody's saying. It's a wonderful subject. And what you were saying there flows very well from what we were just saying about data and about business risk. And when you said that the result of the official controls may lower the risk level, yes. The example I always use is a nuclear power station will always be high risk, but we also want it to be safe. And the way to do that is to have competent management. And so, yes, the business risk is, I think, often very underrated. And so I think you're focusing on exactly the right things.
Thank you. And again, I want to compliment the service, the Food and Veterinary Service of Lithuania, for all the work they've been doing for now nearly 2 years, right? Of fundamental reform of everything. Showing that when you actually decide to do it, it's possible to do things, and that yeah, you may not have perfect data and everything the first year, but you can move from not good to better, and then from better you will move to even better. I have a couple of people left only, and I don't, since they're not people I know well, I have seen them, but I don't know if they're still here. Einstein Overland? No. And Klaus Gitter? No. Okay. Everybody left, so I'm sorry. I should have told them earlier. Let's do for next time. Ask people when is their departure time, but it was still within the limits. So we have one, I think, last colleague from Singapore, then we have Donald, and then we have myself. So, Wang-Chi, want to come up?
Hi, my name is Wang-Chi from the Singapore Ministry of Health. It's always not so easy going after so many people have shared their views, but I'll try to keep it short. So I did 2 presentations, one yesterday about the Singapore healthcare regulatory's sort of way forward. We're embarking on a regulatory transformation review. And earlier on today, at one of the workshops, I shared about some of the regulatory tools that we adopt to manage new and emerging healthcare service and business models. So in relation to my presentation yesterday, I think it was culminated from ourselves, right?